Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff from Fluent American welcoming you to the question sessions. This is a first of a new show we're doing where we just kind of answer some questions related to American English pronunciation, also related to just English in general, life in general, and things like that. Now, if you have a question that you would like us to specifically answer, what you can do is you can post them into the chat box. I would ask that if you do post a question, please put a couple of asterisks before your question. That way I know it's for me and not just randomly. Okay, so put those before your questions. That way helps me see it and things like that. We are going to be responding to questions that people have sent me in some forums on Facebook and also on Telegram and things like that. If we don't get to your question, you can also post it in the chat box as well in case we just missed it. So again, we're going to dealing with all things English, all things basically anything that can help you with your studying or improve your accent or improve your life. As we go through these, of course, think of some more things, let me know as well. So let's take a look at our first question. So again, just kind of pulling some things from different places. So again, this is coming from our form. Unfortunately, with the form, I don't know who sent what. So I'm sorry if I don't mention your names and things like that. Although if you want to make sure that is clear, you can always let me know in the chat box, and that's fine. So first thing we want to know is some kind of like some vocab questions, like the difference between, we have a series of words that we're going to try to discuss. Hopefully you can see that now. Okay. We're going to be discussing the difference between, so for instance here, collide and collapse. Okay. Again, it's a pronunciation channel, so I just want to mention briefly some pronunciation things here. So when you say collide and collapse, you can make a light L sound with the tip of your tongue making contact with the top of your mouth, like L. It's like collide, collapse. Or you can make more of a dark L sound too, where the tip of your tongue actually stays down against the bottom of your mouth. So like collide, collapse. Okay. Do whatever feels more natural to you. But I think we're kind of focused more on vocabulary. So what are some of the vocab differences between collide and collapse? Collide has the sense of two objects kind of making contact with each other. There's some sort of force, some trauma that occurs. Okay. Whereas for collapse, this is more, think about something that kind of just falls onto itself. So to give you an example for collide, like two cars, if there's a car accident, two cars might collide. But for collapse, think of like a building or a house that kind of just falls to the ground. That would be more of a collapse. Okay. If anything about that is not entirely clear, be sure to let me know. Appreciate that question. Comment here about the mic. Mic's really low. Thanks for letting me know. I'm going to adjust the audio. I tried changing some things around, so that might be why. Marcos, can you let me know? Can you hear that a little bit more? I'll also boost it on my soundboard. Okay. Let me know if that is any better. In the meantime, I'm going to fish up our second question here. Okay. So here's our second one, talking about the difference between isolation and alienation. Okay. Cool. Thank you for letting me know. Appreciate it. Okay. So talking about isolation versus alienation. So for isolation, this has more of the sense of being by yourself. Okay. So like, for instance, if someone lives in isolation, what that means is that they disappear, like they're kind of just on their own. Okay, you can't really see them or anything like that. They live in isolation. Okay. Whereas for alienation would mean that people, if they alienate you, that means that they create distance between you and themselves. Okay, so alienation means some examples of that, like let's say in school, if there are people in school who they don't like you, they bully you, or they don't talk to you, like if no one talks to you, that's a way of alienating you. Okay. So again, alienating, kind of separating yourself, not talking to someone and things like that. Isolation, more about just kind of that being on your own. Okay. Alienation, again, is kind of applying that distance to something or someone. Isolation being more kind of separate. Okay. You can think of isolation like if you live in the middle of the wilderness or if you live in the middle of the forest, you're living in isolation. Alienation, again, like school. If there's someone you don't like, so you don't talk to them, you alienate them. Hopefully that makes sense. Hello also to Show. Great to see you. Glad you could stop by. What time is it there? It's super early in the morning, no? Other questions too related to vocab. What is the difference between a coffin and a casket? Okay, so a coffin and a casket, just to let you know. So a coffin, honestly, these are the same. I'm not even going to try to make this all technical. They're really the same. They're pretty interchangeable. Okay, so like a coffin or a casket, if you don't know what those are just basically when you die, if you get buried in the ground, they put you into a coffin, or if they put you into a casket. You will hear both words. There may be some technical differences between them, but in all honesty, people use them relatively interchangeably. Okay, so I think just kind of something to keep in mind there. Not saying that that's correct, but it's just kind of the reality. Okay. Moving on to this one. Good. Kind of a similar situation for our next group of words here. Okay. Talking about the difference between a boss and a manager. Honestly, very similar things. A boss a lot of times is kind of your more immediate supervisor. Okay. It's like the person that is directly responsible for making sure you're doing your job. You can have all different kinds of levels of bosses. You could have your boss's boss and things like that. A manager, a lot of times, I feel like a boss varies on the hierarchy. Again, you can have a boss's boss and things like that, all the way up to even the CEO. Whereas a manager, a manager is also your boss, but usually it doesn't imply as much those higher levels. Your boss's boss, you may not really call your manager. Okay, so I think boss is the more general term, whereas the manager is a more specific role for that person who is responsible for you. But again, you do have some flexibility in terms of using these. Okay. I think a lot also kind of depends on the type of work you're doing. Okay. Shok mentioned it's 4:08 in the morning. Well, thank you for spending your morning with us. We do appreciate it. Okay. Hey to Mr. Go Big Go Home. Great to see you, sir. So again, like a boss, I think is kind of the more general term, whereas a manager, again, just kind of, I don't personally think of a manager as I wouldn't call a CEO oh, my manager. I might call a CEO my boss or my big boss, but yeah, but maybe that's just me. But there certainly are some related terms, so there is some flexibility there. Lots of vocab questions to get us started. I might take a break after this one to move on to some other things, and we'll come back. Thoughtful versus considerate. I mean, these are pretty much synonyms. Okay, if they both kind of imply the sense of, thinking of other people when you're making a decision. And I think that aspect of it is pretty interchangeable. Okay. I think in general, collocations can be helpful phrases for this. So for instance, I think it can be helpful to, how do I put it? A very common phrase with thoughtful is oh, that's so thoughtful of you, especially if you do something nice for someone. Okay. It's pretty common to, if someone buys someone flowers, or if my son's still pretty young for this, but it would be very thoughtful of him. If my son vacuumed the floor, when I was out, I'd be oh, that was so thoughtful of you. Thank you for doing that. You can also use consider for those situations, but I think it's less frequent. Thoughtful, like for gifts, this seems to be the more common word. My biggest suggestion, though, would be kind of just finding some collocations, finding some common expressions that use each of these, and then kind of getting a more general idea about the nuances. But in general, these are both synonyms. You can use them in general pretty interchangeably. Okay. I know there were some more vocabulary questions, but we'll come back to those in a bit. We have a question here from Mr. Go Big Go Home. What does a late bloomer mean? A late bloomer is, if you're familiar with the story of the ugly duckling, I don't know if you've heard that before, but the ugly duckling is kind of the story of like this duck that, well, we assume it's a duck, but kind of grows up with a family. And then we find out that, it wasn't actually a duck. It was actually a swan this whole time. But unfortunately, it had this really traumatic life where it, I don't know, people thought the other animals saw it was really ugly because they're like, oh, you're a weird looking duck, right? But then as it got older, it turned into this really beautiful bird. It's like a late bloomer in that sense is something that takes time to develop into itself, whether for beauty, whether for intelligence. Like I see in this example here, like for instance, you're not showing much, your brain's not fully developed. Yeah, so it's like it takes you longer than it does for other people to reach a certain point. That's kind of the meaning of a late bloomer, I would say. Okay. If you guys can think of some other examples in the chat, other examples you could think of for a late bloomer, or maybe some experiences you've had where maybe you were a late bloomer. Like for instance, I know for me with like language learning, like I didn't really study a whole lot of languages till later. Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's unintentional. What I would say is that it's not something you have control over. It's involuntary. You don't determine how fast you learn something or how you develop physically and things like that. And those are things that are outside of your control. So in that sense, it's self-intentional. Yeah. Okay. Next question. I've been using our question. It's not a lot. Okay, of course, if you have some other questions that you would like me to answer, feel free to put those as well. Okay. This is a big, big, big one here. I don't even know if they'll let me put this in the chat. Okay. And they did. Oh, okay. They're going to split this one up. How many times a day do you need to study pronunciation, taking a sound, for instance, like the A sound? What is the metric you use to check your progress? Because it's your own recordings, feedback from an A speaker. Great question. I think that it's a little bit of both. What I usually tell students is that studying pronunciation doesn't necessarily need to be something that you spend a lot of time on every day, but it needs to be something that's consistent. The example I often give is, let's say you have 30 minutes to study pronunciation every week. Okay, 30 minutes may not sound like a lot, but let's say that's the time that you have. Well, in my opinion, and feel free to let me know what your thoughts on this are. In my opinion, it would be better for you to, instead of taking like a 30-minute class or going hardcore pronunciation for 30 minutes, what I would really recommend is I would say, hey, split up that time. So instead of doing like 30 minutes of just hardcore pronunciation, maybe do 5 minutes a day. Do 5 minutes a day for a week. Okay, I would much rather you do that than doing a full 30 minutes at once. Because the way the mind works is it works best when things are repeated and spread out over time. So the more you're able to do that, the greater your mind understands, like, oh, this is something that's really important. So I keep seeing this. So also keep in mind, the mind doesn't like to work. The mind is very lazy. So the mind's like, how can I save the most energy? Okay, if I keep seeing this thing over and over again, it must be important. So let me try to remember it. So that's one of the reasons why I would say for studying pronunciation, I would say, hey, can you do 5 minutes a day? If you can do more, do more. If you can do 10 minutes, do 10 minutes. If you can do more, do more. If you can do 15, 20, an hour, then do 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. There's no magic to this. It's math. The more time you put in, the better you'll get. So find a happy medium for you. If 10 minutes is too much, see if you can do 7. 7 minutes is too much, see if you can do 5. 5 minutes is too much, see if you can do 1 minute. Something is always better than nothing. In terms of checking your progress, so kind of looking at the second part of this question. So to check your progress, I'm a huge advocate of recordings. I'm always telling people to make recordings. I know you don't like the sound of your voice. No one likes the sound of their voice at first. But what you're going to find is the more recordings you do, the less you care. You really stop noticing. You're just like, oh yeah, that's what I sound like. Okay. Like you really stop paying attention. You really stop noticing it. So the more recordings you make, the better. Save the early recordings. Save the recordings from that you made like a year ago. Because let's be honest, when you learn a language, it's an up and down battle. There are days, there are minutes where you feel like a language god. You feel great. You're like, oh man, I can do anything I want in this language. I sound good. But then there's other days where you feel really bad, So other minutes where you feel really bad. It can be like an hour to hour kind of thing. So having some of those early recordings, that way you can kind of see what you sounded like before versus after, I think is really special. Other ways you can kind of check yourself, minimal pair type exercises. Like let's say you're studying vowel sounds. If you know that there are some vowel sounds that you commonly confuse, like let's say you confuse the A sound and the S sound. Like you think edge and age sound the same. They don't. They're two different vowels, but you're not hearing both of them. Well, study those minimal pairs. Do it every day for a week. The more you study it, the more you'll start hearing the difference. When you study pronunciation, the first thing you'll notice is that your listening improves. Then your pronunciation improves after. So that's another way you can kind of check your progress is how well are you noticing the difference between vowel sounds or other sounds that confused you. Also get feedback. So other part of this, get feedback from a native speaker. Yeah, sure. It's like, is it your own recordings or feedback from a native speaker? Yes, it's both. If you have a native speaker that you're talking to and they can give you suggestions on that, take advantage of that. That's a resource. You start with something simple like a vowel, and then you move on to more complex things. Yeah, again, yes. Both. You don't. Pronunciation isn't a one thing at a time kind of. There's lots of things going on. I will say this. With my students who we've covered, let me backtrack. In terms of the progression I have with students, we usually start off with the individual sounds first. Okay, I can show you what it looks like. Let me show you the path that I do with students. So there's no surprise. Give me 1 second. Hey, Mr. Go Big, I see you left a comment. I'll be there in a moment. Okay. Get to see all of me here. All the angles. So this is the first thing we do. And by the way, if you go to my website, if you go to fluentamerican.com, you can get the vowel test for free. I will review your vowel sounds for free. Okay? But anyways, we start off with individual sounds. We start off with comments. See all of them here? Okay, these are minimal pairs comparing sounds that sound similar. Then we move on to vowel sounds. So we start off with individual sounds. Then after that, we move on to other things. We then move on to like intonation, linking, reductions, and things like that. The reason I do that is because what we find is that once we get to looking at individual sentences, what we often find is that it's pulling everything together. You need to know the vowel sounds. You need to know the consonant sounds. You need to know the linking. You need to know which words are being stressed. You need to know which words are being reduced. You need to know you're using contractions. You need to know the intonation pattern. It's all coming together. So that's the progression I use with students. That being said, as we study vowel sounds, what's the homework assignment I give to students? I say, hey, make sure you're shadowing. Make sure you're listening to native speakers and repeating. And when you're doing that, that's at a greater level. That's everything. So I think it's great to target, but I say you can also incorporate some more complex things as well. Okay. Yeah. it mixes things up. If you get tired or bored, like if you're like, oh, I'm tired of studying vowel sounds. Okay, study consonant sounds. Study intonation. Study something else. Do shadowing. Mix it up. Language learning should be fun. If you start getting bored, that's bad for you. You're not going to progress as fast. This also brings up a point here. Oh, for sure. It's just like everything. This is just like anything in life. Going to the gym every day for a couple of minutes is much better than just going to the gym once a week. 100%. Similar to that too, it's also okay to take breaks. Sometimes your mind is doing a lot of work. Sometimes you need a day off. And then you come back and you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot easier. It's okay to take breaks. Nothing wrong with that. Let me know your thoughts. What's your stance on this? Like when you're studying, let me know in the chat. Like how often are you studying pronunciation? You studying every day? If you're studying every day, how many minutes? If you're studying every week, how many minutes? Let's kind of talk about what your plans are. What you guys doing? It's like doing a YouTube channel. How much work am I putting in on the channel every day? I'm probably putting in a solid in terms of like all the socials and getting videos ready and editing and things like that. It's a commitment. You put in time. It's hours every day. You do what you can. Okay, I think we got all that question there. Thank you for sending it. Next up. And with all the sound power that he or she is trained in that. Yeah, I don't necessarily think you need a teacher to improve pronunciation. I think just like having a personal trainer is, people who get personal trainers at the gym, why are they doing it? Because maybe they're the type of person who they don't know what to do. They don't know what to start with. So you get a personal trainer to kind of guide you. I think this is very similar pronunciation. You don't know what to study, so a teacher can help you. It speeds up the process. But at the same time, you're the one doing the work. But it kind of gives you a roadmap or a guide. So what I would say here is that, can we follow the sound pattern in English where he or she? Yeah, I think so. One thing I see a lot, when I was working at language centers especially, is sometimes we would get students who, they would have really good accents. They would have really good pronunciation. And we would ask them, okay, how did you get to this point? And they'd say, oh, just watching movies, watching TV shows, things like that. Since the time they were a kid. They grew up on it. That's how native speakers learn. Native speakers are, that's how no one teaches us pronunciation directly. I never had a pronunciation coach teaching me American English. It's the same thing with your first language. It can certainly happen naturally. Yeah, why not? But having a teacher, I think, can speed that up. Having some of that more formal training can speed that up. Question. Says better learn English the fun way or hard way? What does better mean? Because, look, if you study the hard way and you do that for a year and then you get burnt out, but if you study the fun way, but you're able to keep studying English for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, well, yeah, the fun way. Do the thing that's sustainable. If you can sustain doing the hard way, do the hard way. But if that's going to kill you, that's going to burn you out, then do the fun way. Mix it up. The hard way and the fun way don't have to be different. Do activities that interest you. Like if you're doing the hard way, still do activities that interest you. Like for instance, if you're doing shadowing, shadow conversations that, do talks that interest you. Like if you're shadowing a speaker, why would you like shadow someone who puts you to sleep? Shadow like a talk you're actually interested in. Learn some things that are new. One of my favorite things to tell students is that, hey, if you're I think for a lot of people who are watching this channel, a lot of you, especially if you're a student of mine, like if we've met in class, in any class, or if we've talked in any capacity, Telegram group, you send me emails, you send me Facebook messages, things like that. For so many of you, you are already at a very advanced level of English. Okay. A lot of you are in between that like B2, C2 range. Okay. That means that you are at a level where you can function in society and be fairly successful. So if I were you, I would not be taking English classes. Okay, I personally would not sign up for like taking like a grammar class or things like that. I wouldn't be signing up for like IELTS prep or anything. I would be signing up for classes on things I'm interested in. You know, to give you an example of this. And fun does not necessarily mean it's easier, and hard doesn't necessarily mean that it's productive. I see Shok talking about they do 5 minutes every day. I appreciate that because I see Shok putting in the work. I listened to your audio file, by the way. I'm excited for tomorrow, where we listen to people. If you're not familiar, tomorrow we're doing a live stream where we listen to your pronunciation, give some suggestions and things. Okay, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, stay tuned because that's coming up. But like I said, if I would not be signing up for English classes, unless you're like. I think pronunciation is a little bit different because it's a little bit more targeted, but I wouldn't just sign up for like an English class that like teaches grammar and stuff like that. I wouldn't sign up for a conversation class. If I were you, I would be signing up for things like this. I would go to, give this a minute. It's a question sheet. I would go to a site. There's a website that I meetup.com. And this may take a minute to load. Meetup.com, you will need to make an account. An account is free. Okay. This will take a little bit because I have to log in and things are laggy. Okay. But basically what Meetup does is it lets you find things that you're interested in. So for instance, let's say that you're really interested in programming. A lot of my students are like doing like computer programming and stuff like that. Okay. Cool. So what you can do is you want to find things in the US. So you pick a US state that is close to your time zone or as close as possible. To give you some examples, if you choose New York and you live in Asia, New York will give you about a 12-hour time difference. If you're in Europe and you pick New York, New York will be about a 6-hour time difference. If you're in the Middle East and you're picking the US, you're looking at about a 9-hour time difference. Give or take some hours. If you're in Australia, New Zealand, some crazy. I can't tell. I forget what that time zone is. That's crazy. But let's say I want to find coding. I'm really interested in coding. I have no interest in learning how to code. No interest whatsoever. Okay. Look at this. And you want to find, look at this, online events. These are online things because thanks to the world situation we're in that right now, still lots of things are online. So you can join this. Find a topic you're interested in. And guess who's going to go to these things? Native speakers. And a lot of you are not going to do this because a lot of you are going to be afraid or scared of interacting with natives, or you're going to find some other excuses and things like that. But look, if you are serious about language learning, this is how you do it. Most of you, if you're watching this, you're at a point where you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to break out. This is how you do it. Find something you're interested in. Are you interested in like a reading club? Maybe you want to practice your reading skills. Okay. Or language things if you want to learn about some Japanese script. But okay, here we go. It's like virtual book clubs. They're having book discussions. Look at all this fun stuff. It's also great for other language. That's another thing too. If you're learning other languages, you can type in the language here. So for instance, we see Japanese stuff. So let's just say maybe you're interested in learning Japanese. Let's learn some Japanese, guys. But let's learn Japanese in English. Oh my gosh. Did you ever think of that? Learning another language in another language? Oh my gosh. Okay. Because guess what language, especially if you pick the beginner classes, guess what language they're going to use a lot of? They're going to use English. They're going to use English in these classes. So this will give you an advantage. Okay, you're with other people who have the same interests as you, studying the same thing, right? And you're learning a new skill together. What's not to love? Okay. Going back to this one. I need like a water break sound. If you guys have any suggestions, what sound should I use for a water break? Let me know. Say learn fast if you hung out with native speakers, reading books, and memorizing vocab. Hanging out with native speakers, 100%. If you read books, you'll get good at reading books. If you study vocab, you'll... So I've talked about this before, but I would like, when my son's a little bit older and I get some more free time, I want to learn another language without taking any notes. I don't want to use any paper. I just want to focus primarily on speaking and like listening stuff. Because I want to see if... hello to Dustin checking in. Great to see you, man. Because I want to see... I'll be honest, when you're learning with textbooks and books in general, in like written sources and things like that, what do you get better at? You get better at reading. You get better at learning vocab that you never practice using in your own speech. So like it's called passive vocab. It stays in your head and it never comes out. It's those times where like you can't say something, but you hear it and you understand it because you have lots of passive vocab. You always have more passive vocab than active vocab, and that's okay. But I think that the way languages are taught, they really encourage that. I think if you're able to focus primarily on speaking and things like that, you increase your active vocab. You know, if you read, you get better at reading. It ties a little bit over to speaking. It ties a little bit over to speaking, but primarily you'll get better at reading. One thing you'll find too, though, is that as your speaking gets better, your reading also gets better too. I think to a faster degree, honestly. But yeah, that's my own take. If you had to choose between books or people, pick people. 100%. Dustin, bring in the questions. I have no idea. In like a real heavy like American accent, like Dubier Sierra. If I was trying to apply some different pronunciation in American English, like maybe Dubier, Sierra, or something like that. I don't know. That'd be my guess. Thanks for the question. I've never gotten that question before. Always looking for new ones. Let's see what our next one. I don't even know how to answer this question. Oh my gosh. Question: how do American people interact in every given situation? I don't know. How do people from your country interact in every situation? You know, I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that. My biggest suggestion would be to do some people watching. You know, you can do like walking tours. You can go to YouTube and type in like walking tours and just kind of see how people do. It's hard with like the media and like TV shows and movies because things are so exaggerated. Like if you think the U.S. is like the movies, it can be a bit surprising when you arrive. Yeah. Interact with more Americans. Talk to more people from the U.S. You know, vlog, like YouTube vlogs. I mean, it's still a bit artificial because it's all filmed and staged, but that can be helpful ways to kind of get some ideas about how people would handle things. Yeah, I wish I could give a better answer to that, but that's kind of a tricky question to answer. Mr. Go Big, Go Home. I just wish I didn't have anxiety, so I would go out and socialize with people. Yeah, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. I appreciate Shok mentioning the beach wave sound. I have a space on my soundboard, so I might have to use that. Thank you, Shok. I appreciate it. I just wish I didn't have anxiety, so I'd go out and socialize with people. Yeah, I mean that's a. I get the social anxiety thing. I certainly get that. Um, what I will say is that it's also one of those things too, where if you there's also a comfort level aspect of it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get. I'm not saying I want you to go out there and get panic attacks, but set little challenges for yourself. That's kind of the biggest suggestion I would give. Um, and the challenges should be something where it's just something you check. We're not worried about, don't put it on things you can't measure. Make it something you can measure. Do something like this. Like today, here's an example of a task you could do. Today, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to say hello in English to one other person. That's it. That's your task. Task is just to say hello. They don't need to respond back. They don't need to start a conversation. They don't need to do anything. You just need to say hello in English to someone. That's it. Okay. You can graduate to other things too. And this can also work in your own city, especially like if there's like a touristy part of your town. Even if you're not a native speaker, fine, just do that. Go out to a store and say hello and just see how it goes. Or you can graduate. You can say, how are you? Or how's it going? Something like that. And then you can expand on that. So the next level would be, hey, before you go to bed, you need to have a 1-minute conversation with someone in English. Okay, that's it. You need to have a 1-minute conversation with someone in English before you go to bed. It can be online, but it has to be spoken. So just like set little challenges for yourself. Okay. And as each one, whenever you do a new challenge, you should feel a little bit of nervousness because we need to push you out of your comfort zone. But the more often you do it, the easier it will get. Okay. But you have to do something, otherwise it's always going to be the same. Yeah, and that's a shame to hear. You have to be careful about the people you're associating with and things like that. Unfortunately, there are lots of toxic people out there. Always try to find a circle of friends that encourages you. Okay? I would say, hey, if you're using a program that does voice messages, can you try to use some voice messages yourself? That's another challenge. Do one voice message a day. How about that? If you do any of these challenges, let me know how they go. Next question. All right, this is another long one. This is going to be broken up into 2 parts because it's kind of long. I don't think it's all going to fit. Here's the first part. What should be the order of learning? And what things are necessary to learn this American accent? These things should be learned in order. Okay, so I'm basically seeing 2 questions, like what's the order? And then do you add more topics like pitch and speed? Okay. So, I don't think there necessarily has to be any set order. I can tell you the order that I use with my students. And we kind of talked about this earlier in the stream. So, in terms of order, some things that we do are the first thing I do with students is we take the pronunciation test to find out individual sounds. The next thing we do is we work on placement, just to kind of give an idea of the concept. We don't expect it to be perfect. I just want you to be familiar with it. Okay, know how it works. After that, we move on to vowel sounds. This is because your listeners are listening for vowel sounds. If you get the vowel sound wrong, it's going to be very hard for native speakers to understand you. Okay. After we do that, we focus on consonant sounds. Consonants, you have some more wiggle room. You can use the wrong consonant and people will still understand you. Okay. Then after that, we then move on to the things like linking, stress, reductions, intonation. I kind of group those all together personally. Okay. I think you can determine which order you want to do them. But the whole thing is we're building up to native speaker conversations. And, this is kind of a tricky thing too. So it's like, so that's the order I use. But at the same time, I encourage you to be doing things like shadowing. Even though we're focusing on the targeted things outside of classes with me or outside of a Telegram group, hopefully you're shadowing a little bit every day. Hopefully you can study the other things. Study a little bit of intonation on the side. Study a little bit of reductions on the side. It's all going to help. So I don't think there's any specific order you have to follow. That's just the general progression that I would do. I think it's hard to take a sentence, go sentence level and catch everything. But maybe the goal isn't to catch everything. The goal is just to focus on a couple elements and then focus on something else the next time. And so I don't have I can't say 100% sure, always follow those steps. But I think starting with placement and starting with vowel sounds is a great first step. Stress, I often link with our discussions about pitch. Speed, I'll be honest, I'm not super worried about speed. There's native speakers that talk super slow. There's native speakers that talk super fast. Yeah, I think a lot of people get worried about fluency. But the example I always give, on IELTS, when I was a speaking examiner for IELTS, I was a speaking examiner for 3 years. There is a category on speaking where if you talk too fast, even if your grammar is perfect, even if your vocab is perfect, you are going to get a 6 on fluency because you talk too fast. If it starts affecting people's ability to understand what you're saying, that's going to lower your score. A lot of people associate fluency with just talking fast, and there's more involved with fluency. It's not just speaking super fast. Just a note. Thank you for that question. I do appreciate it. Up next, do Americans love British accents? Some people like them more than others. I think a lot of times British accents are kind of associated with being kind of snobby or like highbrow a little bit. But not always. Some people love them. Yeah, that's most people probably just don't care. It's like, okay, whatever. I should go big, go home, asking for medical advice. Oh my gosh, I am not a doctor, sir. I am not a doctor. I think, when it comes to issues related to like mental health, including like depression and anxiety, I'm very fortunate in that these are things I haven't had to deal with. Although, certainly in some of the communities I'm involved with, these are real aspects of people's lives. The medicine certainly can seem to have a pretty big impact. It seems to work even better when paired with things like exercise, having a strong community of people around you who will help you develop and don't help you just focus on your own depression. And also things like exercise. Okay. So those are kind of the things that, making sure that all of those components. Medicine can help, but it's not the only thing, I don't think, personally. But I am definitely not a doctor. Hello to Kieran. Kieran, let me know how to pronounce that if you can. Great to see you. Sorry about Nightbot. Nightbot's very naughty. Come on, Nightbot. Be nice. Thank you for the emojis. I appreciate them. There was another part of this. Always getting, not always, but this is a relatively common thing. Native American black people. Okay, so basically black people. Why do black people sound different than white people? I have a video on this whole topic, which I would encourage you to check out. In fact, you can find it. But as I'm loading that up so I can show. I think this is a tricky question because the reality is I think the media often promotes this idea that black people talk a certain way, that people talk black. And while, yes, some people may talk differently, the reality is that it's they're this is the same sound as other I would expect because it's people. I think people, this question is in reference to especially kind of like urban styles of pronunciation and things like that, because it's kind of like a regional thing. Where did you grow up? Depending on the areas you grew up, there may be different styles of manners of speaking. You know, people growing up in the suburbs talk a different way than people who grew up in the country talk different than how people grew up in certain cities. You know, so this is kind of it's a tricky question to answer. There are other things, if you can certainly find some regional things in, there is Ebonics, there's African American vernacular. These are styles of speaking that some people have, but certainly not all black people. Okay. Um, Another thing too is that there's also elements of like code switching, talking differently depending on the situations you're in. So, for instance, here, like black people, English hard to understand. I would take a look at that video because that's going to go a lot more in depth into the conversation. Okay, so I'll definitely check that out. But yeah, I mean, if you are interested in things like Ebonics and African American vernacular, you can find, you know, videos that kind of describe some of the features. It's kind of treating it more as like a separate language, because there are some, or probably more like a dialect, because there are some changes that happen grammatically. For instance, involving like the verb to be in ing forms and things like that. But yeah, be careful with just saying that, oh, black people talk a certain way, because that's definitely not true. And it's kind of a harmful, it can be a harmful question. I think it's a very taboo. I don't want to say like it's a taboo question. I think it's coming from a place of ignorance, and I think it's also coming from a place of just how, again, the media often portrays certain communities. This isn't just an experience for the black communities, for other communities as well. And they're, we create these archetypes, we create these stereotypes that, the media often very much reinforces. So then when people don't fall into them, people almost get surprised, like, and they make comments like, oh, you're not black because you don't talk this way. That's where, and this is where it becomes harmful, is because, these sorts of thoughts start leading to actual expectations. And these expectations actually start changing how we interact with people. And that's why I don't think the question itself is harmful, but I think the path it can lead on is potentially dangerous, because it can actually impact people's lives. This is directly impacting people's ability to find jobs. This is directly impacting, first impressions people have. This is directly impacting people's lives. This is just kind of something to be considering there. But yeah, I want to try to find some other. I would like to do a live stream with another instructor or other people on that topic, because it's a big one. It's not the first time I've seen that question, and it's not the last time I will see it. Details about. So I can't judge a book by its cover. For sure. It's really hard because, I mean, not an unrelated example, but also somewhat connected. Like, for instance, my brother tells people what I do for a living. I'm an English teacher, but a large part of what I do is like accent training and pronunciation training. And you say that to some, native speakers in the US, and they're like, oh, you teach people pronunciation? How could you? How dare you teach pronunciation? Like, there's nothing wrong with accents. Yeah, 100% agree. I don't have an issue with your accent. I think your accent's beautiful. But I also understand that, hey, when you're learning a second language, it's very common for people that kind of have that desire to sound natural and native-like. A lot of people have that. A lot of people also have the experience where they miss out on job opportunities, or they have issues at work because of their pronunciation. I wish that weren't the case. I wish I didn't have a job doing this. I wish it wasn't necessary to have this sort of profession, you know. But let's not be naive. We know how people are. Then that's why we're here.
Question.
Let us see here. Details about how to pronounce the R sound correctly. Also examples from lightest to heaviest. Then there's another question after that. Okay. Let's talk about R sounds. Some of this actually ties into the very last video I did. Okay, so the last video talks about really short words that people are mispronouncing a lot because of things like R's or L's or N's and lots of other consonants as well. So I encourage you to take a look at our last video. Okay. But R sounds. There's a couple different ways to pronounce R sounds. What they all have in common is that in general, the back of your tongue goes high. Okay, so you want the back of your tongue up here. What you do with the front of your tongue, you have more flexibility with. You can have the front of your tongue down here against the bottom of your mouth, like ruh, ruh. Okay, that's the tip of my tongue pressed against the bottom. You can curl up the front of your tongue like ruh, ruh. Okay, so that's with the tip of my tongue high. Okay, so again, ruh, 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 ruh. You may not hear much of a difference because, again, two reasons. Placement. Firstly, your placement doesn't change. Front tongue doesn't really matter, but the placement always needs to come low in the throat and open. Second thing is that the back of your tongue is always high for both of those. Okay, so one thing I see a lot with students with the R sound is the first thing I see a lot is students treating it like a British R, where before consonants it disappears. So for instance, a word like modern tends to be a little tricky for a lot of students. Getting a lot of like modern versus modern. Okay, so make sure R's before consonants are pronounced. The other thing I see though is that students are making this R sound super tense and super strong because they know that in American English the R is more present. But present doesn't mean super strong. So you never want to get like an where I'm closing my throat, so not a lot of air is making it through my throat. I'm raising my placement, so I'm up around here as opposed to down here. That's a problem. Okay. So again, the sound you're really going for is more not Okay. So make sure your placement's low. Making sure also enough air is making it through your throat. A lot of students are kind of closing off the throat, and that's shutting things down. Okay, so make sure your throat's wide enough. So again, it's not it's more I'll give you just some quick examples of a low placement tense sound followed by a low placement relaxed sound. So again, first time tense, second time high. Second time relaxed. It's like Can you hear the difference between those? Again, Okay, in general, you want the second one, more that sound, more air flowing through. Okay, so just some things you want to consider there. Okay, let's do examples from lightest to heaviest. I'm not sure which examples you would like to focus on. Speaking of R sounds, Rana's in the house, a resident Canadian, as of now, right? Hope you're doing well, miss. Let's take a look at some R words, like words that have multiple R sounds. And you guys can say these with me and let me know which one you find to be hardest. I'll post them in a minute, and then you guys let me know in the chat which of these words you think is the most difficult. Okay, give you a minute to look at those words too. Take a glass of water and then we'll drink.
Like what you're hearing? Let us know by liking and subscribing.
Okay, so here are just some examples. We're going to do them with very open, light R sounds. Okay? Rural, roar, regular, rather. Again, rural, roar, regular, rather. Okay? What you don't want to hear, I'll give you some tense R sounds that you don't want to do. Rural, roar, regular, rather. Notice how the R sounds just dominating, right? That's a little too much. You want, again, rural, roar, regular, rather. Okay? So yes, watch out for those R sounds. They can be tricky, right? So keeping things low and open. That is always the goal. Speaking of that, dum dum dum. Pronunciation of these words again. First one will see in that video. Again, several videos I have, but the first one, girl, girl. And you want to watch out for girl because what a lot of people are doing is they're tensing up on the L. So again, like girl, with the tip of the tongue making contact up here. Use the dark L sound. Keep the tip of your tongue down against the bottom of your mouth. Okay. So instead of girl, try to get more girl. So this, again, it's not girl. It's more girl. Next one. New York. New York. Notice that the stress is on York. It's not new. Okay. New York. New York. If you find that difficult to say, try to say or. Then you can add the Y. Your. Then you can add the K. York. Or your York. I'll do that progression like 2 or 3 times. Or your York. Or your York. Or your York. Or your York. Okay. Next one. Background. Question is the K or the G dominant? Neither. It's the vowel sounds. Okay. In American English words, the vowels are going to be the dominant part. Background. If you listen to that, you're not going to hear a back. You're also not going to hear a g. It's not background. It's background. Get the ow. Let those be your dominant sounds. Ow, background. Okay. Let's just note on those. Hopefully that helps out. Thank you for sending the questions. I do appreciate it as always. All right. Last couple questions from the form. And of course, if you have some questions for us, be sure to let me know in the chat. Okay. Shoka mentioned that roar is the hardest out of those words. I would agree. I think that or sound is very deceptive for a lot of people. I think a lot of people have a hard time saying or. Okay.
Question.
Asking the real questions here. Do I have online classes? Yeah. Yes, we can hook you up. There's a couple different opportunities here. Okay. Rana also mentioned it, the word world. Yeah, for sure. In fact, again, I have a video that talks about that as well. But yeah, girl, world, same idea. I think a lot of it, some of it's the R sound, but a lot of it is the L sound. Dark L's are really going to make that a little bit easier because it's just getting more air through. Okay. So again, it's not world, it's world. Can you say world with the tip of your tongue down against the bottom of your mouth the entire time? World. I think another issue too is that people have in their minds these ideas about how letters are supposed to sound. Even if they listen to it and they hear something else, they're like, no. Like subconsciously, the mind is like, you see an R, it has to be pronounced this way. You see an L, it has to be pronounced this way. When in reality is that, no, pay attention just to the sound. Don't worry about the spelling. Just focus on the sound. World. Just try to copy that. Don't let the other stuff distract you. But the question here was again, do you have online classes? Oh man, am I excited to show you this. If it lets me. Look at that. FluentAmerican.com. Pretty simple, right? If you're watching this, just type my name, FluentAmerican.com. Okay? First thing you're going to see is Telegram group information. So if you want to join that, if you want to get pronunciation corrections every single day of the week, definitely click there. It's $5. $5 gets you 30 to 31 days of access. I don't know any other pronunciation deal that's better. You can go to like to other pronunciation things. They'll charge you like $30, $40, $50, $100 some dollars for their courses and stuff. This is $5 for the month. You get corrections from me and another teacher. I have some other opportunities coming up soon, which I'm excited about, but I have to wait till my son starts preschool. But I'll keep you posted on those soon. You can also book individual classes with me too. We also have a group class on Saturdays right now where we look at native speakers talk and then we analyze it. Okay, so if you're looking for a group setting, it's a cheaper class. I forget. It's like maybe like $5-10 for like a half-hour class where we just analyze native speaker conversations. We have fun. That's kind of like what we do. Lots of places. Okay. Also, if you join our newsletter, sometimes we do discounts and things like that. We have free classes sometimes that come through. So if you're trying to get some deals in, things like that, you should probably subscribe. Got some things going on you might like. But yeah, we do have classes. Speaking of our Telegram group, I did have a question from there that I want to just take a look at. Just kind of want to show you what the Telegram group looks like. Okay. So again, this is our Telegram group. What was our challenge today? I think I posted a little earlier. Today we did animal noises. So I gave some sentences for people to say. And then I gave an audio file of myself saying it. And then people are sending me a little slow tonight. Friday nights are hard. People sending me their files. Okay. Cool. It means I don't have as much to correct. It's cool. Because the last couple of days have been kind of crazy. Just all the files people keep sending. Lots of corrections. Okay. So yeah, if you're looking for some pronunciation corrections every day of the week, get in here. It's $5. Access every day. Corrections from me and Lenora, who is great. Lenora was actually when I was at a language center. She wasn't one of the first people I hired, but I hired her very early on. She's such a great teacher. She's learning Chinese. She's fluent in Mandarin. She's getting there in Arabic. She's just a great language learner. Super helpful for teaching too. So we're super fortunate to have her in the Telegram group. But yeah, anyway, so we have a question from one of our members. Kind of a long question here. I think this is one of our last questions too. So if you have some questions about American English pronunciation that we have not discussed, or English, or life, or anything, this is your chance. Put it in the chat box. Great to see it. Am I able to talk about the flap T? Yeah, I can say some things. Distinction words between better and party. T in better is feels like Russian. Or I think the T in party is more like a D. If I try to use the R in party, so this kind of goes back to the previous question too. I can't make it. It's a big difference in flap T. I'll be kind of a tricky question to answer because one of the things that's nice about American English is that, for a lot of sounds, there's multiple ways of pronouncing them. Okay. For instance, a lot of you have seen the video I have where I talk about tricks for your tongue. And we talk about, for instance, did you know that for the letter N, like we're saying N, you can actually still make the letter N sound with the tip of your tongue against the bottom of your mouth. So like N, 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 N. Okay. Same thing with the letter T. So instead of having your tongue up here, can you put your tongue against the bottom of your mouth? It's like T, 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 T. Same thing like D, D, D. Z, Z, Z. So the reality is that, look, for a lot of sounds in American English, the tip of the tongue can actually be down. In a lot of cases, you never really need to raise the front of your tongue up here to speak in American English if you don't want to. You can certainly get away with it. Part of this is just because the vowel sounds are so dominant. You get your vowel sound right. That's 90% of your battle. So this is also going to be valid for the flap T or the fast D sound. If you've never heard of that, the flap T is, for instance, what are the words that they give again? Better. Okay. So you can say better. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but that's definitely going to give you a more British sound. In American English, usually those T's are not aspirated, okay, when they're in between vowels or a couple other situations. Instead, they become what's called a fast D or a flap T. Okay, so instead of saying better, much more likely to hear better. But the issue is that for a flap T sound or a fast D sound, there are many ways of pronouncing it. You can do it with some light contact against the top of your mouth. So for instance, like better, I made some contact there. Same thing for the word party. I touched the same part of my mouth. Better, party. So I'm making light contact with the top of my mouth and then dropping. It's very fast. That's why it's called a fast D sound, or a flap T, because you're just flapping up and down really fast. Okay. But the other reality is that, you don't have to make contact. You could just raise and lower your tongue very fast without touching anything. So instead of saying better, I could say better. Instead of saying party, I could say party. Okay. So again, better, better. Party, party. Okay. And again, this is because English is so focused on the vowel sounds. The consonant sounds, yeah, they kind of need to be present, or they need to be close enough, but the vowel sounds are the key. So, honestly, I wouldn't say there's much of a distinction between saying better and party. You could say better and you could say party, or you could say better and you could say party. So it's there's a lot of flexibility, and none of them are wrong, or none of them is wrong if I'm being grammatical. Okay, so just kind of something to be aware of there. If I try to use the R in party, I just can't. Can you say par? Okay, so you know what your issue is. You know your issue is your R sound. Great. That's half the battle. A lot of students don't know what the issue is when they're, they say a word and they don't know what part of the word they're saying wrong. So that's great. You know what your issue is. So now we can start working around that. Okay. So if the R is the hard part, before you even say party, can you say par? Can you say par 3 times? Par, par, par. Cool. Can you say that faster now? Par, par, par. Okay. Notice that the dominant sound is not the R sound, it's the ah. Okay. Par, par, par. Par, par, par. The R is not coming in till the very end. Okay. If you if you find that hard, can you just say R? Take off the P. Can you just say R? Like R, 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 R. If you're saying R, 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 that's a sign that your R is too strong, and that's a sign your placement's too high. Okay. So again, if you're saying R, 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 that's not quite right. You're too tense, you're too closed off, and you're too high. You want to open your throat more. You want your throat to be more open. You want more air to go through your throat. So instead of doing R, 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 so you can do R, R, R. Can you hear a difference? R, 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 R. Okay. As you get more comfortable with that, now let's add the P back. Can you do par, par, par? Can you do that faster? Par, par, par. Okay. And then, if you can do that, now we can start adding the other sounds. So let's say R and then add the fast D sound and the E. Can you say arty? Arty? If you can say that, can you say that 3 times? Arty, arty, arty. Can you say that faster? Arty, arty, arty. One thing you're going to notice when I say it fast, it's not going to sound perfect, but that's not the goal. People don't speak perfect English. People are mushy. People are getting the breath through. There's lots of air moving. A lot of people say that in American English, it sounds like things aren't getting pronounced. I certainly understand that, but I think the bigger issue is that when people are coming from other languages into English, they are listening for vowels. They're listening for consonant sounds. They're listening for those hard, clear consonants. So already from the beginning, their goal is in the wrong spot, because American English does not want hard, clear consonants. American English wants really soft, open, flowing vowel sounds. That's what English wants. That's what American English wants. Doesn't care what you do with the consonants. Get rid of them. Weaken them. American English wants the vowel sounds. Get the vowel sounds open. Get those flowing. Get the airflow moving. Okay? So when you're saying arty, you should be focusing on the R and the E sound. Don't even worry about the fast D. Can you say Ari? Can you say Ari, Ari, Ari? Now add the fast D sound. Can you do the Ari, Ari, Ari? Then add the D. Arty, arty, arty. Can you hear the difference? Arty, arty, arty. Arty, arty, arty. Arty, arty, arty. Arty, arty, arty. Okay, it's a very slight difference. The fast D sound doesn't need to be super strong. Okay. And then you can add the P back in. It's like party, party, party. Party, party, party. So the long story short, if you can say the pa sound and the E sound, if you can make those sound good, everything else in the middle, we care less about. Party, party, party. Party, party, party. Okay, I'm going to the party. You'll be fine. Okay, but that's just my own take on that. You can talk to other teachers; they may disagree. But I'm all about the vowel sounds. I am Team Vowel. Are you guys on Team Vowel or are you on Team Consonant? I am all about Team Vowel. Let me know. Hashtag Team Vowel. Get your vowel sounds open. Okay.
Question.
What does validation mean? Validation means you're kind of looking for like outside acceptance or approval of things that you've done. To give you an example, for YouTube, let's use, I'm doing YouTube right now. So how do people get validation on YouTube? Or how do a lot of people get validation on YouTube? Well, a lot of people are looking at view numbers. They're being like, oh my gosh, your video got 100,000 views. Your video must be good. You know, some people view those views as validation. Some people view subscriber numbers. Some people are like, oh my gosh, you have 50,000 subs. Some people view those as validation. They'd be like, you must be a good channel because you have all those numbers. Okay. Personally, I disagree. Like, I would rather have like the 5 people who, you know, are actually improving with you versus like the 1,000 people who follow other channels but don't actually do any of the steps. You know, that's not. I don't know. Like, I'd rather be working with people that are putting in the work. You know. But kind of going to your example here, so they need validation from girls. Yeah, I mean, if you're seeking validation from girls, is like you want girls to come up to you and say, "Oh my gosh, you're so cute, you're so hot," and like stuff like that, you know, or attention. You know, so that's how I would view validation. You need that outside approval. You know, self-validation is the key thing. You should be approving your own things. Be happy with what you're doing. Take pride in your own thing. Don't take pride in what other people tell you. You know, if someone gives you a compliment or if someone insults you, neither of those things should change how you view yourself. All right, I'm taking a look again, just updating the form, see if there's any last questions. As I do that, thank you for spending the last however long you're with us for. We've been streaming for an hour. I know a lot of you haven't been here the whole time, but it's great to see you. If this is your first time joining us, this is a bit of an unusual thing. So this is a segment we have titled the question session. So we're just kind of answering people's questions about American English pronunciation, but also English and also things like life and things like that. Also tackling things related to vocab, all kinds of stuff. So if you have a question that we did not get to today, because maybe you're watching this in the replay, we would love to know what your question is. Okay, so be sure to leave a comment. And also tune in tomorrow. Really quick, let's kind of talk about what's happening tomorrow, which you will also get a link to, or might pop up after this stream is over. But tomorrow, let's say you are studying American English pronunciation and you want to get an idea of like, how good is your accent? Are you making mistakes? Are there things that you're not noticing about your own pronunciation? Are you nervous about your pronunciation? Are you seeking validation for your pronunciation? You know, whatever the case may be. Okay. That's what our video tomorrow is going to be about. Allow me to show you. I'd like to share once more. Also show you steps on how you can send in your own pronunciation files. So if you'd like to get some corrections for pronunciation, okay. You can see here. There's us. We're in here. But we don't want that. We want our upcoming stream. Okay, so tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. New York time. This is the video. We're going to take a listen to your pronunciation. How do you send your pronunciation? Well, we certainly do that. Take a look. This is a document. I will put this in the chat in case you're eager. I just updated this, like 2 hours ago? We got a couple files coming in. Okay. Oh, yeah, I told Shoka I already listened to hers. Mi ha mandato un po' di italiano. Che bello. Excited to listen to the show Italian. Okay. So some people are already sending us files. If you want to send in your own pronunciation files, what you can do is go to the top. You're going to see that part where it says directions. Okay, that's going to give you all the steps you need to send in your own pronunciation files. Okay, right up here with Vocab.com. When you record yourself, it's going to give you a link. You put that link here, we'll be able to hear you. Okay, and then from there, we can give you some suggestions and feedback. Okay. All right, so that's going to be happening tomorrow, so I'm excited about that. Okay, one last reminder again, if you're interested in getting pronunciation corrections from me and our assistant, Lenora, who's great, you can take a look at patreon.com/fluentamerican and get some feedback starting today. If you're able to join today, we can get you inside the group within the next couple of hours. Okay, if that sounds like something you're interested in. Okay, otherwise you'll have to wait till tomorrow. But in any case, my name is Jeff. I am part of Fluent American. I pretty much am Fluent American, right? But yeah, we take a look at American English pronunciation. And if you think of some other questions in the future, be sure to just leave them in the comment box in the replay. If you're watching on the replay, thank you. If you're watching live, thank you. Like Jesse, thank you. Always good to see you. Mr. Go Big Go Home. Marcos, if you're still around, thank you. Rana, Shok. Who else did I miss? Kieran, if you're still around, thanks for stopping by. Dustin. I think that's our many folks. And if you sent me a question, but you didn't leave a name or things like that, or if I missed you, thanks for sending questions. We will see you guys on the next stream tomorrow. Less than 24 hours. Oh my gosh, you guys get tons of Jeff this weekend. How exciting. You guys have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. I will see you soon, okay?